can be the opportunity for all countries of the world to come together and reform global corporate tax rules, because unless there's a collective initiative, each country will be cornered and will continue giving companies just space to make money without being properly taxed, fairly taxed at source. So this question has to be addressed globally. There can also be regional approaches. For example, Egypt being part of the Arab League or being part of the African Union, there can also be regional approaches to try to insist on companies paying their fair share, and then of course national legislation. But foreign direct investment is needed. We are in a global market. We have to attract foreign resources, but the quality of those resources and fair taxation are important.
And ways? And ways?
I said fair taxation.
And ways? Last
Can we just keep it to one question?
Plus?
Maybe just finish that.
Sorry.
I didn't get your second
Yeah.
question.
Aaron.
Yeah. Hello, Ms. Byanyima. I want to know how you deal with these paradox. On one hand, you invest money on rural people and help them improve their standard of life in agriculture. And on the other hand, governments sign trade agreements that ruin basically all your efforts. How do you deal with that? How do you act toward that? For instance, in West Africa, we just seen the economic partnership agreements with Europe that can ruin our agriculture. How Oxfam and financial institutions used to deal with these paradox?
Oxfam, we are critical of some of these new public-private partnerships. We are really calling for a review of this concept of PPPs. We are seeing PPPs in agriculture as working against the interests of poor people. Some of the PPPs are resulting in land grabs, and we are speaking out against them. And that's my point, that public must be unpacked. By public, we should not mean government making a secret deal with a private sector company to invest in agriculture and violating the human rights of ordinary people. Public must mean communities. We must bring in the aspect of communities, of people themselves who suffer hunger, who live on the land, being part of the deal. So we are critical of these PPPs. We see them as dangerous for ordinary people and crushing their human rights. So we are not saying that PPPs must stop, but we are saying that put communities there at the heart of it. Let people be, farming people be in the driving seat of these. And Oxfam, we have a long experience of this. We have models that work. We bring men and women in the community, smallholder farmers, into the supply chains of agribusiness. I could give you one example of work we are doing in Rwanda, for example. In Rwanda, as in many other countries, we have worked with a local entrepreneur who had an idea, an innovative idea of processing cassava leaves, which we eat. I don't know, you eat them in Benin, cassava leaves, but we just eat them as fresh. He had an idea of drying them and packing them and sending them abroad to all these diaspora people who long to eat their cassava leaves. We helped him to buy a factory, to install a factory to make it to scale. He's now exporting these dry cassava leaves, crushed, packed, to Europe, to America, to Australia. And in return, we asked him only that he sources his cassava leaves from women farmers in this whole area where he put his factory. Now you have more than 2,000 women growing cassava leaves in the borders of their land. It doesn't even take away the land for food. It's a border crop. They grow it, they cut it, he collects it. Some of them have jobs in the factory to process, and there are incomes, and women are taking their kids to school. They have got money in their pockets, and the man has got his factory and is now a big exporter. This is the kind of investment that we are talking about. If PPP is that, then fantastic. But if PPP is about coming and taking a whole district of land and throwing people off the land and making profits for a foreign company, that will not solve poverty.
Thank you very much. Could we have a question from the group at the front? There is one. Yeah,
You mentioned in your speech that one of the main challenges is the climate change. So my question is, what should the government and all the other actors do in order to mitigate this problem?
Climate change. For the developing countries, it is a challenge mainly of adaptation. It's about adapting to a changing climate, and it's about building resilience, being able to absorb the shocks that come with adverse weather conditions because of climate change. And this is an added cost to development. This is doing development in a more expensive way, and the resources are needed for this. This is where we are saying that these resources must be raised through new innovative ways, not taking what was already there, small resources for development, the small ODA, and stretching it to also address adaptation. But we need new and additional resources. These can come from new taxes, for example, on those international transactions that are emitting carbon, a lot of carbon emissions, such as the transportation by sea and by air. You could impose some small taxes there that could raise a lot of resources that could help poor countries to adapt to climate change. It's also about industry paying for the cost of carbon emissions, but it's also about mitigation. It's about the companies that are emitting, that are relying on dirty energy, fossil energy, moving away towards cleaner energy. That's innovation in the area of mitigation. But for developing countries, the challenges of adaptation and resources are needed. Resources, technologies are needed to adapt agriculture towards a changing climate. Resources are needed.
Thank you very much. Walid, I know you put his hand up a while ago.
My question is about women conditions in rural zones, not especially in Tunisia, because all around the world the situation is the same. I think a majority of them had worked in agriculture in very bad conditions, and they are illiterate. They can't access to banking and insurance finance. So how can we make better their situation, their conditions?
Women
Yes.
in rural areas.
Yes.
Well, there, I think of three important ways. One, it's very important that women in their communities have a voice at the family level, a voice in the community, in local decision making. That will change is a very strategic priority for women to have a voice at home, to be able to influence investment decisions at the family level. You are the farmer, but you are not the one who can decide on what to grow, where to grow, how to sell it, when the money comes, how to spend it. A woman is not a part of those decisions. That makes inefficient decision making, not only disempowering women, but it makes investment at the family level bad investment.